Alright, we're going to be doing section 1.9, negative numbers, multiplying negative numbers, okay? And so go ahead and get started. Make sure your note sheets are out. Pause the video at this point and write these numbers down, okay? And when you come back, you will have, you'll be ready to start, okay? Alright, we're going to multiply first this one over here. We're going to multiply, this one right over here. 3 times 3 times 5 is 15, okay? 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. And 3 times 0 is 0. We're going to stop there for a moment. And I want you to notice that there's a pattern that's happening as we go down all these numbers that are here in the color white, okay? We started with 15 and we went down by 3. Then we went down by 3 more, and down by 3 more, and down by 3 more until we got to 0. This pattern worked. And so if we continued with the pattern and we went down 3 more, from 0 we would down -3. And if we went down 3 more, we'd be at -6 and we'd be at -9. Okay? These math patterns have to work this way for numbers to be logical. All right? And that is the truth about when we multiply this -3 times the -1, we get a -3. If we multiplied the 3 times the -2, we would get -6, and the 3 times the -3, we'd get a -9. And so if we jumped to this, and we wanted to find a pattern so that we wouldn't have to keep doing this pattern down here, we could notice that this 3 times 3 here is 9. And when we have a positive times a negative, we get that negative right there. Okay? So if I wanted to jump, and I didn't want to do 3's anymore, and I wanted to do like 5's, 5 times a negative anything I wanted, let's say -6, all I do is I take multiply the absolute values of those numbers. 5 times 6 is 30. And that 5 is positive times the 6 that is negative gives you a -30. Because a positive multiplied by a negative is going to always become a negative value. And we got that negative right there. Okay? So let's see what happens when I have another kind of scenario, like maybe a negative times a negative, okay? So let's keep going with the scenario that we had. We now know that a negative times a positive gives us a negative value, and we take the 3 times the 3, which is a 9. And I take a negative and multiply it by a positive again, and I'm going to get a negative. So 3 times 2 is 6. I have a negative times a positive, which is going to be a negative. And -3 and 1 is 3. Anything times 0 is 0. We started at -9, and when we went up to here, we went up by 3. We went up by 3, and we went up by 3. So if we continue the pattern, we're going to go up by 3. And if I continue the pattern, and up from that 0 is up from 0, 3 is a 3. Then up from 3 there is 6. And up 3 more is 9. I want you to notice we're no longer in negative values here. So we have to continue with the pattern of going up by 3. And in doing so, we became positive. We had 2 negatives here. I'm multiplying a -3 and a -1, and 2 negatives turned into a +3. 2 negatives turned into a +6, and 2 negatives turned into a -9. How did I figure out the numbers so that how do I figure out the 9 here? I just multiply the 3 and the 3 to get the 9. And since I had 2 negatives, it becomes a negative. So if I had a -12, let's not do 12, let's do -2. And I had a -4. Since a negative times a negative is going to be a positive, and the 2 times the 4 is going to be 8. So it's going to be a +8 because a negative multiplied by a negative is a positive. So let's talk about what we just did here. we talked about that a negative times a positive is always going to be a negative. And a negative times a negative is always going to be a negative. Excuse me, a positive. Negative times a negative is a positive. This is the one you've been doing all your life. A positive times a positive stays positive. Okay? Let's do some examples. Okay, so write these problems down. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause the video, write these problems down. I'd like you to try to do these on your own and then come back and check yourself. Ready? Go. Alright, let's check it. We have a positive times a positive. A positive times a positive is a positive. We don't have to write it, but 3 times 4 is 12. I have a negative and a positive, gives me a negative, and 5 and 4 makes 20. This time I have 2 negatives here, and 2 negatives become a positive. You don't have to write the positive. But 6 and 7 is 42. I think that we're finished now. We've just talked about that a negative times a positive is a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. And a positive times a positive. Wait a second. I think I said that wrong. A negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is still a positive. Okay? Thanks.